I think from a biological standpoint, one of the most exciting combinations is the ibrutinib and venetoclax combination. And several groups, including our own, have shown synergy of this approach in the laboratory side. And at the ASH meeting, we saw some very exciting initial results in patients in some of the first clinical trials to explore this combination. In the relapsed refractory setting, there's the study being led by Nitin Jain and colleagues at MD Anderson, looking at this doublet for relapsed patients. And it seems to be highly effective there, with nearly all patients responding, very impressive rates of complete remission and MRD undetectability, and excellent tolerability. The other important study that was presented at the ASH meeting is the Clarity study, which is led by Pete Hillman and the group in the UK, looking at a very similar combination of ibrutinib and venetoclax and seeing very similar results in terms of achieving MRD undetectability without the need for chemotherapy. One of the things that I think is important about Dr. Hillman's study is that it's actually become an arm now in a large phase 3 study called the FLAIR study, ongoing in the UK, which is comparing that combination to older chemotherapy-based regimens and other ibrutinib-based regimens. And those types of phase 3 studies are really the ones that are going to help define the standard of care for the disease going forward.
So in the relapse setting, there are new treatments that are in development and in evolution. One of the recent reports that John Bird presented at ASH this last year was an update on the experience of acalabrutinib in relapsed patients with CLL. Now, acalabrutinib is an irreversible binder of Bruton's tyrosine kinase. It inhibits through binding of the cysteine 481 moiety. So it works very similar to ibrutinib. It has activity in treating the disease. It has a smaller scope of inhibition of kinases. So the important point behind that is that perhaps it has a more narrow toxicity profile, less rash, perhaps less atrial fibrillation. So it's an appealing agent from the toxicity profile side of things. And again, it works very similar to ibrutinib. So the report at ASH was a large report of a trial that has been done in relapsed patients with CLL treated with acalabrutinib. And clearly there's activity, there's durability to the activity, and the drug is very well tolerated. There is a randomized trial that has been completed enrollment comparing ibrutinib with acalabrutinib for high-risk patients with 17p or 11q in the relapsed setting. And that will be a head-to-head comparison, and we'll get an idea about the toxicity profile and the efficacy between those two agents in what is considered a high-risk category of patients. It is currently approved for patients with mantle cell. And it potentially, depending on whether or not you can access it, affords an option for patients with ibrutinib intolerance in CLL. So if you have a patient who can't tolerate ibrutinib and you still want to use a BTK inhibitor, I think in the near future we will see acalabrutinib become an option for those patients. So I think that's probably where we'll see acalabrutinib first in CLL. Now, there are other randomized trials, not just the head-to-head comparison with ibrutinib. There's a frontline trial with acalabrutinib, so there will be phase 3 data that will support approval of acalabrutinib, I'm sure, in the near future. Duvelisib is a PI3 kinase inhibitor. It was presented at ASH by Ian Flynn in a large randomized phase 3 clinical trial in comparison to ofatumumab. And that trial demonstrated improvement in progression-free survival in patients who received duvelisib versus ofatumumab as a treatment for their relapsed disease. It's not yet approved by the FDA. I think they're undergoing review of the data now, so we don't know when and whether or not it will be approved. If it is approved in the near future, it will be another option among the drugs of that category. So the main one that's been approved already is idelalisib. That's the PI3 kinase delta inhibitor that's approved. So Duva may be another option among drugs in that category for relapsed disease.